guys, welcome back once again to Resistance Chicks. Today is the 30th of April, 2020. We just finished going live about the Michigan protests. So as soon as that video finishes processing and this stream is over, be sure to go back and check that out. It's been quite a day there in Michigan. So it's also been quite a week for General Flynn. And I think that you probably decided, Leah had decided to do this stream because on our Friday shows, we do a weekly roundup, and this segment has to be
its own.
It's so exciting. We've been fighting this for 3 years, literally over 3 years.
This is Flynn's recent tweet.
You're kidding.
Just that.
Oh my gosh, I love him so much.
So if you guys do not know what's happening,
maybe you could recap for them the whole story just real quick. Not just what's happening now, but what happened in the beginning. Why did this even start?
Sure. Okay, so General Flynn was hired on as Trump's national security advisor with the Trump team. Exactly. He was a Democrat. He worked under Obama. He knew the ins and outs, I have goosebumps, of the deep state and what was happening. I have so many goosebumps. Oh my goodness, this is going to be awesome.
She's feeling goosebumps.
So what was happening over in the Middle East? He was there on the ground. He knew that we were training ISIS soldiers, especially in Syria. This goes back to Syria. This goes back to the 7 countries in 5 years. We had already overthrown Libya and Iraq, and the list goes on. And the last 2 were Syria and Iran. So they were on the list to have governments overthrown. If you didn't know this, we kept hearing a little bit about Bashar al-Assad and how he was chemically using chemical weapons against his own people, and how he was a huge dictator, just like Gaddafi there in Libya. And, you know, as Hillary Clinton wickedly laughed and said, we saw, he died. Okay? So Flynn wants us out of Syria. Flynn wants the troops out of Afghanistan. Flynn is advising Trump on the deep state. Flynn is Trump's number 1 weapon to uncovering everything the deep state under Obama and Clinton and Bush had put together.
This was within the first 2 months of Trump's administration at the very get-go. This is all the drain in the swamp.
He was definitely, advising Trump on Islamic terror and things of that nature, and especially the formation of ISIS. So this is what happened. This is what is happening. They went to set Flynn up to try to take him out. And this week, we kept hearing things are going to drop, things are going to drop, things are going to drop. Well, his lawyers held back information.
Yeah, they should not have done that. His
previous lawyers, Sidney Powell is his new lawyer, and the DOJ held back. And Sidney Powell, for as long as she's been his lawyer, says, I need those.
She knew what was there.
Unredacted 302s, those handwritten notes, which is the screenshot that I had up for you just now. Okay, so this is the big bombshell that dropped yesterday. And I'm going to go over these. Developing unsealed FBI notes, those original 302s, which supposedly weren't in existence. And now they are. 302 is what the FBI agents have to write out afterwards and before and get things going.
Here's my question. Before you give this, and I'm not going to give the punchline, but going into this, it's such a bombshell, what Leah's going to show you and read to you. Why was it written down? Like, I would never write that down.
So here we have these unsealed FBI notes reveal the intent of the FBI's January 24th, 2017 interview with Flynn. What is our goal? And I'm just going to see this in the red box.
I'm going to make sure they can see it. Wait. I'm going to have to make us really dark so you guys can see this.
Well, you could bring it up for them if you need to. I've tweeted it.
Is it on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring it up then.
It's
on your Twitter?
I'm sure it's a few down, but it's...
I'll find it.
It says, what is our goal? Truth admission or to get him to lie so we can prosecute Flynn or get him fired. FBI notes confirmed it was all a pretext. How they plan to get Flynn removed. Get Flynn to admit to breaking the Logan Act or catch Flynn in a lie. Let me see. Keep going. It's going to be down from last night. Keep going. Slowing. Keep going. There it is.
Okay.
It's this technophile, yeah. Their end goal was a referral to the DOJ not to investigate Flynn's contacts with the Russians. Here is an email from Peter Strzok to McCabe. They discussed the potential of the interview occurring over the phone with McCabe, with an FBI agent to be posted to take notes. Also, Lisa Page emails Strzok return how to conduct the Flynn interview. This is pretty crazy. And the first comment here is General Flynn was framed by traitors who wanted to stage a coup. He deserves freedom and praise, and I agree wholeheartedly. Again, let me go over to the Federalist here. Breaking: FBI closed Flynn case dubbed Crossfire Razor, and I told Michelle how interesting that must be to be the guy who comes up with the names for these. Crossfire Hurricane was Donald Trump. This is Crossfire Razor. Yes, I went to Crossfire Pineapple or the Crossfire Fruit Papaya, but Razor seems so much more In early 2007, until Strzok ordered it to stay open. After it found zero evidence that Michael Flynn broke any laws or was acting as a traitor to America, which is what they said he did. With this telephone call with Ambassador Kislak saying he was colluding with the Russians. Remember, the Steele dossier, which 55% of Americans still believes contains true and real and factual information. 77%, I read, 77% of Democrats believe that the Steele dossier is factual, even though it has been proven false.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
The FBI closed its case against Flynn until fired former FBI agent Peter Strzok ordered the case to stay open. The FBI, the field agents, ordered it closed. Now, there are 7 floors, and very rarely do things get to the 7th floor, which is the top floor, which is the executive branch, which has the executives, which you have the McCabes and the Comeys at the top, right? So this was at the top. Comey is under interview saying, "I sent them in." Well, why did he send them in? The other FBI agents under him had closed it. There's nothing here. There's no there, right?
But he sent them in, and they wrote down what their goals were.
What they asked. What is our goal?
Okay,
is our goal is our goal just to entrap him in a lie so we can get him fired and prosecute him? Catch him in a lie. Make him lie. New evidence released Thursday shows that the FBI closed its criminal and counterintelligence investigation on Mike Flynn. Close the case.
Done.
January 4th. 20 days later, Strzok and another agent go in to interview him. The case was closed. Strzok opened it back up again. Why? So that we can catch him in a lie to get him fired and prosecute him.
Remember the little Strzok face?
Do you understand?
This is
only to have it be real.
The creepiest creepoid. Oh my gosh, I can't even look at the guy.
And he's laughing because he knows what he's done.
He had that wicked laugh throughout the whole hearing.
The goal of the investigation was to determine whether Flynn, associated with the Trump campaign, was directed and controlled by and or coordinated activities with the Russian Federation in a manner which is a threat to the national security and or possibly a violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The FBI memorandum formally closing its investigation in Flynn stated, following the initiation of captioned case, the Crossfire Hurricane team conducted a check of logical databases for any derogatory information against Flynn. No derogatory information was identified in FBI holdings. Memo stated, done. According to the FBI document, the federal law enforcement agency also asked a redacted agency, likely the CIA, to conduct a similar search of its own records for derogatory information against Flynn, looking for him, looking to see if they can get a case against him. They want him out. What can we do to get him out? There was no derogatory information to report back to the FBI from the CIA. The memo also reported that the FBI used at least one confidential human source, or a CHS in FBI lingo, to spy on Flynn during its investigation of him. Why are you spying on a U.S. general? Especially when there's no reason to. Leads offered by the CHS resulted in no derogatory information from the spy. At the same time, the FBI also initiated surveillance on a certain Russian subject to determine whether there was contact between him and Flynn. There was no contact between the two individuals, as observed by the surveillance teams. They were trying to find anything to pin on Flynn because Flynn has the secrets to the swamp keys, to draining the swamp. That's why you want to know why the swamp hasn't been drained, because Trump hired Flynn to drain the swamp. And the swamp said, we're gonna take him down. Following the compilation of the above information, the Crossfire hurricane team, which is the one against Trump and the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, determined that Flynn was no longer a viable candidate as a part of the Crossfire hurricane umbrella case. The memo continued, a review of logical redacted databases did not yield any information on which to predicate further investigative efforts. The FBI is closing this investigation, the memo concluded. Text messages included in the latest court filings in Flynn's ongoing criminal case show that Peter Strzok, who was fired from the FBI for misconduct, having his little toot-toot-toot with Lisa Page, and total animus against Trump, ordered an unnamed associate managing the investigation to not close the Flynn investigation, notwithstanding the fact that the FBI concluded there was no legal or factual basis to continue its investigation. The only basis was, we got to get him out.
Gotta get him.
We got to get him out because our lives and our boss's lives are on the line. Hey, if you haven't closed Razor, don't do so yet. Strzok texted at 2:14 p.m. on January 4th, 2017. Razor is still open. Strzok immediately texted to Lisa Page, his little girlfriend, both these people married, right? A former assistant to
but not to each other.
Fired, right, FBI Director Andrew McCabe. McCabe was then fired and he lied. Strzok and Page reportedly had an adulterous affair, captured in their text messages to each other. Additional text from Strzok on February 10th also confirmed suspicions that Strzok personally rewrote the official FBI account of his and FBI agent Joe Panetta's, because I can never say it right, interview on the 24th of January. He went in. Strzok said, don't close it. And then he goes in at Comey's request 20 days later. They're all in on it. Lisa, you didn't see it before my edits that went into what I sent you. Strzok tested his former lover, or current lover. We don't know. They broke up.
No, because she still defends him on Twitter all the time.
On February 20th, 2017. I was trying to completely rewrite the thing so as to save redacted voice and to get it out of you for general review and comment in anticipation of needing it soon. The redaction is likely a reference to Panetta, who took the original notes during the Flynn interview. Should say, trying to not completely rewrite, Strzok quickly texted Page. Should F word, I did the edits better than I'm IMing. The new documents support the case made by Flynn's current defense attorney, Sidney Powell, that the FBI had no legal justification for its interview of Flynn following the inauguration of President Donald Trump. Flynn, who pleaded guilty in late 2017 for making false statements to Strzok and Pienta during that interview, is currently attempting to withdraw his plea there. Now, there's way more. Nikki Haley says, there is so much to unpack with the new info on General Flynn. The most upsetting is how calculated it was. Letting General Flynn off is not enough. People need to pay for this, and the FBI needs to answer to how the public can have confidence that it will never happen again. Shameful.
And I don't even like Nikki Haley.
Kimberly Strassel from the Wall Street Journal says, to really understand how outrageous these new Flynn docs are, you have to add to everything we already know. The key is remembering that the FBI had no reason to interview Flynn. It already had the transcripts of his conversation with Kislak. So what they were trying to do, they had his conversations with the Russian ambassador. And normally, if a government agency is going to go interview you,
it's to get
because they don't have,
have,
or they'll let you know, I have this tape. They don't try to entrap you, especially when you don't have a case open or anything.
What you mean is they didn't go in and say, hey, Flynn, we have the tape that you of your conversation with Kislak. Can you expound on this a little bit? They went in and they were like, we need you to tell us what happened. And they're telling each other, because then we're going to hopefully try to compare it with what he said
And catch him in a
lie. You don't do that.
Right, exactly. The new docs show the FBI already cleared Flynn of ludicrous claims that he was an agent of Russian power. It moved to close that investigation on January 4th, but the DOJ cooked up the absurd Logan Act, which nobody's ever been prosecuted under.
Exactly.
The notion that Flynn had violated an obscure 1799 law, which other people, especially Democrats, have done, meaning like John Kerry trying to meet with the Iranian government and things like that. And if you meet with the government trying to do government policies in another country, you can violate the Logan Act. Okay, but he wasn't doing that at all.
Before I miss this comment here, Ellen Jackson, and I haven't watched this yet, and I don't want to, but like part of me does, and I'm not going to do it. She says, Strzok and Paige's lovers. I loved when Dean Cain and the other girl read the text on stage.
It was funny.
You watched it?
Parts of it.
I didn't watch it. I'm not going to watch it. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
But the fact that they acted it out, it's so great.
There's a lot of curse words in it, actually.
That's
Again,
terrible.
if they thought that he violated the Logan, all they had to do was to prosecute. They had the transcript. Their problem, they knew such ridiculousness would never fly. So how else to nail Flynn? As the notes show, Logan just became the pretext for the interview. The real goal, as they said, as you guys didn't catch that in the beginning, their notes said, what are we trying to do here? Is our goal to get and entrap and try to get him to lie? Get him to lie. Is our goal to get him to lie so that we can prosecute and get him fired? We want him out, right? Basically.
Right.
And the evidence of that strategy is everywhere. We have Comey bragging that they went around White House legal counsel so Flynn would have no representation.
They actually set him up with this meeting, and they kind of just like made it out to seem like, hey, can we just meet up with you? They didn't even make it seem like it was like an official interview, because Flynn came out later and said, if I had known that this was an official interview to try to get information from me, I would have had representation there.
Exactly.
There were 3 guys that went in to gang up on one guy to manipulate him. He was being treated as a and not an asset. That's not the right word. One of those, like, this was he thought he was on the same side as these guys. Okay, he didn't realize that they were coming in to play him 3 against 1. He didn't know that that's how this was happening.
Here's his Comey interview before. You guys remember this? Oh,
Her volume.
hang on. Where Comey goes and says, I wouldn't have been able to do this if the Trump administration hadn't just been brand new.
Yep.
And he laughs about it. Like, these people, like Mom will always say, Patriot Gallery, she's like, people can't sin in the dark. They have to tell you what they're doing to show off.
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done, or maybe gotten away with more organized investigation, a more organized administration. In the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration, the protocol, 2 men that all of us have perhaps increased appreciation for over the last 2 years. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over. And so...
Was it 3 guys or 2 guys? Might have just been 2.
we placed a call to
I want
Flynn.
to correct myself there.
Said, hey, we're sending a couple guys over. Hope you'll talk to them. He said, sure. Nobody else was there. They interviewed him in a conference room at the White House Situation Room, and he lied to them. And that's what he's now pled guilty to.
What did he think they were coming over there for?
I don't think he knew. No, we didn't tell him. Just said, we got sending over a couple of agents. I want to ask you some questions. I didn't have this conversation. My deputy director did. But hope you got a few minutes. You can sit down and talk to them. And he said, sure.
It's so bad.
Oh my gosh.
It's so bad.
I can't even.
All right, so back to Kimberly here.
People are going down there.
Okay, so the real goal was to trap him into saying something at odds with the transcript to get him to lie, and the evidence of that strategy is everywhere. We have Comey bragging that they went around White House legal counsel so Flynn would have no representation. We have, and you know, you're really supposed to give somebody Miranda rights before you try to entrap them in some sort of lie. Anything you say and do will be held against you in a court
This
of law.
was so wrong. It was wrong on so many levels. Matrix of Liberty, our dear friends here, Leo and Nancy, says can't wait for the movie to come out. Puts a little popcorn emoji there. No, I can't wait for the movie to, and it's going to be a movie, and it's going to be an epic movie, and the right people have to make it.
Exactly.
If Hollywood ever opens up again.
Yeah, well, maybe some Christian guys will make it. We have a new email from Lisa Page asking how FBI can get around issuing to Flynn the standard admonition against lying, suggesting Strzok can just casually slip that in. We have McCabe docs showing he discouraged him from getting a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer. FBI decided to get rid of standard admonition altogether.
Need a lawyer, they're trying to tell you it's not like that. It's not a big deal. That's wrong.
So
this
they
is entrapment.
They lied to
Liars.
him.
Oh my gosh.
Also did not tell Flynn that he was being interviewed in an investigatory context, suggesting this was a chat between government officials. As for liberal commentators and legal scholars saying this is all routine, well, let's sure as heck hope not. If the FBI exists to investigate crimes, not to create them. Crimes. The FBI exists to investigate crimes, not to create a crime, not to entrap someone in a crime to get them fired. All right, a couple more things before I get to the Trump comment on this.
412 says laughing and cheering for destroying a person's life. Yes, that's what they did.
That's exactly what they did. Mueller wasn't appointed to get to the bottom of the Russian collusion conspiracy theory. After Comey was fired, Mueller was appointed to help the FBI and the DOJ cover up the evidence of their coup and all the crimes they committed running it. Senator Chuck Grassley says, new DOJ Flynn docs are stamped with SCO, as in Special Counsel's Office, Mueller's office.
Right.
Did Mueller have these documents? Why did his team sit on them? What else is Mueller? This is the Mueller team that cost taxpayers $30 million hiding. The people deserve answers to restore faith in federal law enforcement agencies. Absolutely. And let me see here. I have a...
Can I just say one more time, just for... Democrat.
He was a Democrat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they were going against one of their own goes to prove that your party doesn't put you on their side. It's the global agenda that they are after. They don't care about party one way or the other. They just want you to think that they do.
Again, I'm going to reiterate this. This is from Breitbart. New evidence: the FBI actually wanted to drop the case against Michael Flynn until Peter Strzok intervened. New documents suggest the FBI had drafted a document dropping the case against incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn until Peter Strzok intervened. The documents are emerging as a result of efforts by Flynn's defense team to obtain exculpatory information. Now, remember, this was something that Sidney Powell, his new attorney, kept saying. They're hiding exculpatory information. The DOJ is under obligation to hand over all exculpatory information, and she had to pull teeth to get this stuff. She is the beast.
She's a hound dog. She got a hold of this bone. She's like, grr. She wasn't letting it go, okay? Sidney Powell is going to go down in history as the toughest, tough guy, girl, lady. I mean... dude, she is, and she doesn't even look it. She looks like such a peaceful librarian.
Now, Flynn's previous lawyers actually, I believe, were in on it and trying to get Flynn into jail.
You know that's right.
Covington and Burling, from what I understand, I believe that Eric Holder was at Covington and Burling.
How do they know about this evidence and they don't even tell their client, man?
They encouraged him to accept a plea deal with the Department of Justice, neglected to turn over thousands of pages of documents to his new team. They didn't have these documents, but they had other documents that they did not hand over to the new team.
They are getting their lawyer license revoked.
It's not clear whether the FBI files are also among the Covington documents. If they are, oh my gosh, it was such a horrible, egregious thing. So, new Flynn docs show that the FBI had drafted a document to formally close the case against him on January 4th. But 20 minutes after it circulated, Strzok and other agents put the brake on it. And those are new documents that are coming out from the DOJ. which says the FBI opened captioned case based on an articulable factual basis that Crossfire Razor may wittingly or unwittingly be involved in activity on behalf of the Russian Federation, which may constitute a federal crime or threat to national security. The FBI predicated the investigation on predetermined criteria set forth by the Crossfire Hurricane, which is the Donald Trump investigation, based on an assessment of reliable lead information received during the course of the investigation. Specifically, Crossfire Razor was cited as an advisor to then Republican President candidate Donald J. Trump for foreign policy issues. Since February 2016, Crossfire Razor has had ties to various state-affiliated entities of the Russian Federation. However, he didn't, okay? So here are the text messages. Strzok, hey, if you haven't closed Crossfire Razor, don't do it yet. Sorry, Razor. Hey, if you haven't closed it, don't do so yet. He sent that three times, basically. And then he gets him, and then, okay, still open, right? And your case against going to send you blank for the file. I have not closed it. I'll double check to see if blank had done it. Still open, and I'm listed as the case manager. I couldn't raise blank earlier. Please keep it open for now. Will do. Razor is still open. And somebody says, you want those chips and Oreos? I have no idea. But yeah, that's amazing that he is still open. Good, I guess. Yeah, our utter incompetence actually helps us 20% of the time. I'm guessing anything I can do to help. Just need to relay to him not to close Razor yet. I talk with blank. Okay, what's up? Need to decide what to do with him. And then it says 7th floor involved. That's the key here. 7th floor involved. That's the top.
Top. Comey.
Yeah. And McCabe. I heard that might be the case. Did DD send the material over? Has been sending. So that shows you there that that Comey was involved. A couple of wrinkles. The document is a draft. It leaves open the prospect that it could be reopened if new information were discovered. Flynn was interviewed 3 weeks later. The document shows the FBI repeatedly turned to other agencies and sources for any information on Flynn's activities that might show derogatory information, basically connections to Russia. They came up empty, but for what a source described as a questionable cab or train ride. The documents include text messages from Strzok to another agent, that agent not to close the case. We talked about that. Strzok infamously texted Lisa Page about their mutual dislike of Trump and his supporters and talked about an insurance policy they would pursue in the unlikely event that Trump won the election. Strzok was later reassigned away from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russia collusion after his anti-Trump bias was discovered in the text messages. Remember, no collusion was ever found. Notably, the memorandum to close the investigation into Flynn for allegedly violating the Logan Act, an archaic law preventing private citizens from conducting public diplomacy, was dated January 4th, 2007. Then President Barack Obama, then Vice President Joe Biden, and other senior officials met with then Director James Comey the next day, January 5th, to give him instructions as to how he should brief President-elect Trump the following day, January 6th, about the FBI's Russia investigation. Comey was instructed to tell Trump specifically about the salacious allegations, the PP gate, in the Steele dossier, which were false and uncorroborated. The FBI met with Flynn at the White House on January 24th, and the Department of Justice used that meeting to prosecute him for lying. Now, we do know that Flynn has come out with a document. I believe we read it to you guys. I'm not sure. That said, they wanted to prosecute my son. They told me that, and I needed to have.
And we covered that back in 2017 on Resistance Chicks. We said, listen, guys, they are coming after Mike Flynn's son. Mm-hmm. And when the FBI threatens your family and you know the power that they have, okay, you would say anything.
Right.
You really would. And Mike Flynn's son, in the very beginning, I want to say for a solid year, he was coming out really hard in defense of his dad. Mm-hmm. And they get to you and they get to you. You think it's bad if a creditor's calling you over and over again? Imagine intimidating FBI agents coming after you.
Trying to take down an entire presidency.
Exactly. Like, this is huge.
Exactly. So this is Michael Flynn's declaration. He had not tweeted something out since September 18th, 2017. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he tweeted out the Flynn docs, this document, his declaration. He tweeted this out this week. I, Michael T. Flynn, declare I am a citizen of the United States, more than 18 years old. I served over 33 years in the U.S. Army. 5 of those years I spent deployed in active combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, elsewhere around the world in support of the United States foreign policy objectives. I was a lifelong Democrat, and President Barack Obama twice appointed me to positions that required Senate confirmation. In my final military assignment, I served as head of the Defense Intelligence Agency until September 2014. On December 1st, 2017, reiterated on December 18, 2018, I pled guilty to lying to agents to the FBI. I am innocent of this crime, and I request to withdraw my plea. In December 2016, while I was working on the then President-elect Trump's transition team, I received a letter from the FARA unit at the Department of Justice. In that letter, I learned that FARA's unit sought information about work with my former business, the Flynn Intel Group, did for the company called Innova BV that related to Turkey. I responded by seeking out respected counsel who were known and respected FARA lawyers. I chose Rob Kellner and his colleagues at Covington and Burling. I met with Covington lawyers on several occasions about the FIG's FARA issues. I gave them the information they requested and answered their questions truthfully. The most important instruction I gave them was to be precise. On January 20th, 2017, I entered office as the President's National Security Advisor. 4 days later, FBI Director Andrew McCabe called me and asked if I would meet with a couple of FBI agents at the White House. I agreed. While I was willing to oblige Deputy Director McCabe by meeting with a couple of agents on the 4th day of a new administration, I was extremely busy and only had a limited amount of time to give them. I tried to answer their questions as best I could during that brief meeting before again moving on to a schedule packed with new presidential and national security requirements. I was an intelligence officer for over 33 years. Since 1981 and throughout my military and government career, I have held the highest level security clearances our government provides. When FBI agents came to the White House on January 24th, 2017, I did not lie to them. I believed I was honest with them to the best of my recollection at the time. I still don't remember if I discussed sanctions on a phone call with Ambassador Kislyak, nor do I remember if we discussed the details of a UN vote on Israel. In regards to the sanctions issue, I told the agents that tit for tat is a phrase I use, which suggests that the top sanctions could have been raised. The phone calls with Kislyak are still events of which I do not have a clear memory, and it related to a general category of information, phone calls about foreign policy that are both sensitive and classified. My baseline reaction to questions posed by people outside of my superiors' immediate command or office of responsibility is to protect sensitive or classified information, except on a need to know and a proper level of security clearance. That type of filter is ingrained in me and virtually automatic after a lifetime of honoring my duty to protect the most important national and military secrets. I am and was fully aware that federal officials routinely monitor, record, and transcribe such conversations with foreign officials. Of course, I was embarrassed and angered by the furor that erupted in the press over the felonious leak of highly sensitive and classified information that was my phone call with the Ambassador Kislyak. It was distracting to my work to be the center of such a commotion, and it was upsetting to be the cause of disruption to the busy and important work in my support of the new President of the United States. I resigned as National Security Advisor on February 13th, 2017. I believe my resignation letter to President Trump stated quite accurately what happened, and both he and the Vice President graciously accepted my apology. The transition period was an incredibly intense time. I was communicating with representatives of multiple foreign countries on countless and varied issues every day. Frankly, the national security dangers and concerns that weighed on our minds at the time, sanctions on Russia, were far from the most pressing threat or concern. We were dealing with many more serious crises around the world. The calls with Ambassador Kislyak were brief and few. They were no more exceptional than my numerous calls with personal interactions with senior representatives of governments from around the world during an exceedingly demanding work schedule. After I left the White House, I agreed to engage Kellner, his colleague Stephen Anthony, and other Covington lawyers to represent me in any FBI investigations and eventually the special counsel's investigation. They also continue to represent me and the FIG in regards to the FARA-related issues. At one of my first meetings with Mr. Kellner and Mr. Anthony, they asked me if I had anything on President Trump.
If I had anything.
As it would provide much more leverage with the government. Pause there for a second. I told them from the beginning that I was unaware of President Trump doing anything wrong. With respect to the FARA filing, my Covington counsel did not explain to me that there were any problems with the FARA filing that required Covington to re-examine any of the issues in August 2017 that I hired them to look over. I would have hired independent counsel to reevaluate the FARA filing and amend it if necessary, which you can do, had I known of the severity of the conflict, the making up of the lies and the coup. All you have to do is amend these FARA filings. Okay, It's not that big of a deal. To the best of my recollection, and from my re-examination of the emails from August 2017, the vast majority of email traffic between me and Covington during that time was focused on the creation of my legal defense fund to pay my skyrocketing legal defense fees, by that time approaching $3 million. They fleeced the man.
They did.
They fleeced him. To that end, we put our Alexandria, Virginia home on the market in late November or early December 2017 timeframe to help pay the rising legal bills that we were incurring. We then moved to our family home in Rhode Island. In late August 2017, my wife and I were in Rhode Island. Kellner and Anthony emailed us to arrange a phone call. The call then occurred while we were driving to have dinner with some friends. It was approximately a 15-minute phone call where we had pulled off to the side of the highway. They informed us that there was a development regarding a conflict of interest. They also mentioned the possibility of Bijan being indicted, his son, I believe. Speaking to the conflict of interest, they stated that they were prepared to defend us vigorously if the conflict became an issue. We told them we trusted them. In November 2017, the special counsel's office created sudden and intense time pressure on me to plead guilty. On November 4th, 2017, I believe my Covington attorneys told my wife and me that the special counsel's office wanted to conduct a proffer session with me. They told me the SCO had yet to make a decision about how to proceed with me, and doing a proffer session would be a good way to let the SCO prosecutors get to know the real Michael Flynn. During the same meeting, my previous lawyers, Mr. Kellner and Mr. Anthony, proceeded to walk us through a series of items essentially describing the risks of doing the proffer. From this meeting, I believe the following day, I agreed to do the proffer, primarily based on my understanding that they said if the proffer went well, being indicted would be less likely, otherwise my indictment would be soon. They did not raise FARA issues with me that day or anything about a conflict of interest. November 16, 2017 was the first day of the proffer with the SCO. That same evening, after concluding the first proffer, we returned to the Covington offices, where my attorneys told me that the first day's proffer did not go well, and then proceeded to walk, because they didn't have anything on Trump, and then proceeded to walk me through a litany of conceivable charges that I was facing, and told me that I was looking at the possibility of 15 years in prison. They reiterated the threat of charges against me, my son, as well as the potential of a long-term prison sentence. That evening we discussed, and they encouraged me to use words and phrases they believe would help me get through the next day's proffer and satisfy the special counsel, phrases that are not part of my normal vocabulary. During the second day of the proffer, I used words and phrases that were not really my own voice. I regret that, just as I regret pleading guilty. People think that a 3-star general must know everything, but I was a fish out of water in a terrifying and completely foreign situation, with none of the legal skills necessary to deal with the many things being thrown at me. I hired the team of the best lawyers I had been told I could find, and I relied on them completely. One of the ways a person becomes a 3-star general is by being a good soldier, taking orders, being part of a team, and trusting the people who provide information and support. Lori and I trusted Mr. Kellner and Mr. Anthony to guide us through the most stressful experience of our lives and in a completely incomprehensible situation. I have never felt more powerless. I should have stood my ground firmly for what I knew to be the truth, that I did not lie to the agents. And I should have told this court on December 18, 2018 that I needed to consult new counsel. My relationship with the Covington disintegrated soon thereafter. This effort to say what they want approach during the proffer was noted by one of the interviewing agents, who stopped me at some point to ask whether I was saying was something that really happened or whether I was just speculating, analyzing the past with a benefit of hindsight. I agree with the agent. I was mostly speculating. I recall Mr. Kellner's mention of a conflict of interest in late August in a brief phone call, but I did not attach any serious significance to it. Likewise, I did not understand the legalistic email I received on November 19, 2017 on the eve of my third day of proffers. Almost 3 months later, we trusted my attorneys and expected them to put my interests first, as they said they would do. To have devoted my life to my country, only to be accused of crimes, slandered in the media with false and outrageous claims, and have my family threatened was an unimaginable nightmare, one that those who have not walked in these shoes will find difficult to comprehend. Following the 4-day proffer on November 22nd, 2017, Kellner and Anthony called my wife and me as we were driving home to Rhode Island to spend Thanksgiving with family to tell me the SEO planned to bring charges and that I should consider a plea. The week leading up to November 30th, 2017, Kellner and Anthony advised that if I did not plead, I would be indicted on multiple counts and that my son, Michael G. Flynn, could or would face indictment. They repeated that I would be looking at the potential of 15 years in prison and said that I would be subjected to the Manafort treatment. On November 30th, 2017, as plea negotiations with the SCO were coming to a head, I reiterated to my former lawyers, especially Kellner and Anthony, that I did not believe that I had lied in my White House interview with the FBI agents. I reminded them that I had spoken to representatives of well over 30 countries, many in a single 24-hour period, during that very busy holiday season and presidential transition period. In fact, some of these calls occurred while I was supposedly on vacation out of the country. Although I may have had an incomplete memory of many details of certain conversations when speaking to the agents, I did not consciously or intentionally lie. Hillary Clinton says it all the time. Everybody says it. I do not recall. I do not recall. I do not recall, right? He just didn't know to do the Hillary Clinton thing. If you're ever interviewed by the FBI, you don't recall your birthday. You don't recall how if the sun is shining. You don't recall anything. You go through a state of amnesia where you don't even know what day it is. They will hold it all against you. During this same day, later in the afternoon, Kellner and Anthony explained their view of how the government will go about proving its case and urged me to accept the plea deal that was on the table. They walked me through the final 302 in detail. The final 302, which Strzok had, if he had had the original 302, which said, hey, we don't believe he's lying, he wouldn't have pled. This is all a setup. We have this final 302. Okay. They explained that if I did not accept the plea deal, that I should expect to be indicted in the next day. Still struggling with the decision whether to plead guilty, I asked my former attorneys to make further inquiry with the SCO prosecutors about whether the FBI agents believed that I had lied to them. Did they believe that I lied to them? In the preceding months leading up to this moment, I had read articles and heard rumors that the agents did not believe that I had lied, something I also firmly believed. Mr. Kellner and Mr. Anthony left the room to call the SCO prosecutors. When they returned, they informed my wife and me that they had been told that the agents stand by their statements. Because I was then unaware that the agents had made the statements described in this declaration, and because I was unaware of what they had passed between my former lawyers and the SCO outside the room, I then understood them to be telling me that the FBI agents believed that I had lied. His lawyers were in on it.
Yep.
This is awful.
You're getting disbarred and jailed, man.
I hope so. You have a duty to do your best for your client. My Covington attorneys counseled me to sign this statement of offense. I agreed to plead guilty the next day, December 1st, 2017, because of the intense pressure from the special counsel's office, which included the threat to indict my son, Michael, and the lack of crucial information from my counsel. The SCO had already made Michael the subject of their investigation and taken all his files and communication devices, computer, phone, files, thumb drive. At that time, Michael and his wife had a 4-month-old baby. He literally pled guilty to keep his son out of jail, which he didn't even know if his son had done anything, but they're saying your son did something.
Right.
Nonetheless,
They're
I
so
would have not
crooked.
pled guilty if my former lawyers had informed me that both agents who interviewed me at the White House had advised that I displayed a sure demeanor and did not give any indications of deception. Both agents believed that there was no indication that I was lying or that I believed I was lying. At no time before my plea did my former lawyers explain or disclose this to me. Had I been informed of these disclosures, I never would have pled guilty. Moreover, I would have expected my Covington counsel to refuse to allow me to plead guilty with that information. I have spent my entire adult life accepting great responsibility. I accepted the plea agreement to stop the pain and threats to my family and to accept responsibility for what the government I had defended and served for more than 33 years said I did wrong. However, if my counsel had informed me that both agents said I showed sure demeanor and did not give any indication of deception, and that I showed no indication I was lying or that I believed I was lying, I would not have signed the plea agreement or entered a guilty plea. My former lawyers from Covington also assured me on November 30th, 2017, that if I accepted the plea, my son, Michael, would be left in peace. After I signed the plea...
It's blackmail.
The attorneys returned to the room and confirmed the SCO would no longer be pursuing my son. It was well after I pled guilty on December 1st, 2017 that I heard or read the agents had stated that they did not believe that I had lied. In the White House interview. Still later I heard it reported that Comey and McCabe testified to Congress that the agents didn't believe I lied. After learning this information, I reiterated to my former attorneys numerous times that I did not lie to the agents and questioned if I might be able to withdraw my plea. Each time I raised this issue with my former attorneys, they urged me to stick with my plea because it was a good deal, or that the government would indict me for multiple other offenses and also drag my son back into their crosshairs. Their constant refrain was to stay on the path with the deal they had negotiated. In the days leading up to December 18th, 2018 sentencing hearing, Robert Kellner and Stephen Anthony continued to urge me to stay the path. They predicted correctly that the government would recommend a term of probation and that my son would not be further targeted. However, during the December 18th hearing, December 2018 hearing, Judge Sullivan's decision to proceed with an extended plea colloquy took me both and my former counsel completely by surprise. They had not prepared me for what occurred. The court's comments that day stunned me. The entire experience was surreal, and that day was one of the worst days of my life. My Covington attorneys had only prepared me for a simple hearing in which I would be sentenced to probation, as the government had agreed. I was not prepared for this court's plea colloquy, much less to decide on the spot whether I should withdraw my plea, consult with independent counsel, or continue to follow my existing lawyer's advice. Prior to the sentence hearing, they counseled me that if the court were to ask me if I wanted to withdraw my plea, I should say no, because the court would be giving you the rope to hang yourself. Regretfully, I followed my lawyer's strong advice to confirm my plea, even though it was all I could do not to cry out no when this court asked me if I was guilty. During the break in the hearing offered by the court, my former attorneys were as shocked as I was at the colloquy and the way in which the hearing had proceeded. My wife, Lori, counseled me and my attorneys that we should accept the court's offer to postpone the sentencing. In late spring 2019, when Covington actually insisted I seek independent counsel, I did. New counsel immediately identified the conflict of interest, and I then terminated Covington. I realized my statement and determination to assert my innocence means the prosecutors who already seek to imprison me retaliate further by seeking additional charges against me and dramatically increasing the penalty I face. I express my profound apology to this court, my family, the president, our country, and all who have supported and the faith in me throughout this incomprehensible ordeal. I tried to accept responsibility by admitting to offenses I understood the government I love and trusted said I committed. In truth, I never lied. My guilty plea has rankled me throughout this process. And while I allowed myself to succumb to the threats from a government to save my family, I believe that I was grossly misled about what really happened. I will not confirm a plea of guilty I should never have entered. I have served my country honorably all my life and accepted responsibility for myself and others from a young age. My sister Clara wrote to you in her beautiful letter on behalf of my siblings. As God is my witness, the truth is I am innocent of these charges and any other alleged criminal conduct, and I request to withdraw my plea of guilty, and I will fight to restore my good name. To the best of my recollection, the foregoing is true and correct. I declare under penalty of perjury, under the laws of the United States of America, that the foregoing is true and correct. And he actually did that this past January 29th, 2015. And he just let us all know. 2020. And he just let us all know that. So, with that in mind, here today, John Roberts from Fox News asked Trump these questions. And I'm going to make sure this is on because you are going to love this. I believe that like with Trump, that he does not need to be pardoned.
No.
That he is completely exonerated.
Yes.
And that anybody under certain circumstances might, under the counsel, the wicked counsel, the government saying they're going to put your son, and the DOJ is saying you committed a crime. You committed a crime.
We have the proof.
We have the proof you committed a crime.
He's a general for over 30 years.
Right.
The fact that they were treating him this way and lying to him and withholding information is the most egregious thing I can think of.
Right.
Or misspoken when he talked to him and did not include his meeting with the Russian ambassador to the United States. Do you believe that General Flynn may have unintentionally misled the Vice President?
Well, I really have to talk to the Vice President, but I'll tell you what, General Flynn was under enormous pressure, and it was an artificial pressure, because what they did to General Flynn was a disgrace. Well, it was a total disgrace. It's shocking. And I hear even more information came out today. What they tried to do to destroy him and to hurt this presidency was perhaps in our country's history, there's never been anything like it. An absolute disgrace. But I'll rely on what the Vice President said. I can say this, and I think you understand this, John, very well. What happened to General Flynn should never happen again to a citizen of this country. Yes, please.
Said that Michael Flynn would come back even bigger and better. So are you going to pardon him? And if so, are you considering to bring him back into your administration?
Well, it looks to me like Michael Flynn would be exonerated based on everything I see. I'm not the judge, but I have a different type of power. But I don't know that anybody would have to use that power. I think he's exonerated everything. I've never seen anything like it. What they did, what they wrote, you see this, General. You wouldn't want this happening to you, what they did to General Flynn. And it's just disgraceful. So, you know, I guess we'll get to that maybe someday or maybe not. Hopefully we won't have to get there.
Bring him back into your administration.
Well, I think he's a fine man. I think it's terrible what they did to him. It's something that nobody's asked me, but you're asking me for the first time. I would certainly consider it. Yeah, I would. I think he's a fine man. I think he's got a great family. He loves his son. I will tell you, his son was around a lot, and he loves his son, and as people generally do. And they did everything possible to destroy him. And he's still breathing very strongly, but they really hurt him very badly. Very, very unfair. Kristen?
Quick follow. In what capacity? I do have a coronavirus-related question, but in what capacity would you bring him back?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not even, this is really the first time I've been asked the question, but I think he'll be fully exonerated one way or the other. And so certainly he'd be capable of coming back.
One way or the other.
I want to ask you about comments by your son-in-law, one of your top advisors.
One way or the other. This is such great news. Here's the deal. I am extremely happy for General Flynn and his family and Sidney Powell and everybody that's had a hand in all of this. I am equally as happy that this has exposed the corruption that we have been telling you guys about
it's been a long
for
time
over
coming.
3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is it. This proves if James Comey, he sat in that chair with all this arrogance, thinking that he was in the midst trying to look cool in this audience and to this lady, not realizing that he literally just dug his own grave. That man needs to go to jail, and he has given the evidence to put himself there.
Jim Jordan.
Exculpatory evidence that would have exculpated, so to speak, General
Ohio.
Flynn. That's what they allegedly did, right?
That's the news today. It sure looks like that's what happened. But we also know, based on depositions, based on things that we've already learned, that the agents who interviewed General Flynn didn't think he was giving them any misinformation, didn't think he was lying in any way whatsoever, and yet they still pursued him, still went after him for supposedly lying to the FBI, even though the agents doing the interview didn't think he was. And one of those agents, of course, was the now famous Peter Strzok. So that's what's also so egregious about what happened to, again, this three-star general who served our country.
So here is I feel like logic with a lot of people. Why would they bring charges against him for lying if they didn't believe that he was lying? They're telling him that we believe you're lying when their agents in the 302 says we don't believe you lied.
Right. It's all false. It's all made up. They had to get him out of there. And I believe not only were they trying to get him out of there, they were trying to get him to turn some sort of evidence. They were so desperate to get rid of Trump that they thought that he might have something on Trump. And then when they found out that he didn't, they kind of still had to fly with it. Now we really have to get rid of him. We can't let him go back. You know, what do? It's like, we caught this fish. We can't keep it, but we can't throw it back, you know.
Right.
We got to cut the head off of it or something. So here's before you move on, I want to say this. There are a lot of people in politics that have done some really great things that I'm happy with, but they also often make me ill. And I have seen a lot of Republicans coming out in defense of Flynn now that there's proof. I don't have respect for any of you. I only have respect for the people that stood by Flynn and spoke out about this from day one. Okay? Unless they can come out and say, you all heard me say it over and over and over again, Flynn was innocent, you need to sit down and shut up. Because no one wants to hear from you regardless of what side of the team you are on, okay? Because we sat here on Resistance Chicks starting in January of 2017, our inaugural year here on this show, and told you from day one Flynn was innocent. And we have been fighting for him ever since. And all these people coming out and saying, Flynn's innocent. Look, these people are so corrupt. No, okay? You're only rooting for the Bengals when they winning.
So let me go ahead and read this again to you guys one more time. From the handwritten note, afterwards the interview, I agreed yesterday that we shouldn't show Flynn this redacted if he didn't admit. I thought at it last night. I believe we should rethink this. What is blank is not eligible.
Not legible.
Truth admission or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired. We regularly show subjects evidence with the goal of getting them to admit their wrongdoing. I don't see how getting someone to admit their wrongdoings is going easy on him. If we get him to admit to breaking the Logan Act, given facts from DOJ and have them decide, DOJ, or if he initially lies, then we present him not legible and he admits it, document for DOJ and let them decide how to address it. If we're seen as playing games, White House will be furious. Protect our institution by not playing games. Left column. We have case on Flynn and Russians, which they dropped. Remember, they don't. Our goal is to blank. It's not legible. Our goal is to determine if Michael Flynn is going to tell the truth or if he lies at relationship with Russians. Can quote redacted, shouldn't redacted, review, not legible, stand alone. It appears evident from the email from former agent Peter Strzok, who interviewed Flynn at the White House, to then FBI General Counsel James Baker, who is no longer with the FBI and was himself under investigation for leaking alleged national security information to the media. Okay? This is all crazy. And then you have here from Jonathan Turley. Far more troubling, Flynn document release could foreshadow blockbuster report.
Foreshadow? That means something's coming.
Last night,
I'm excited.
Many of us were digesting the highly disturbing documents released in the case of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. As I discussed this morning in a Hill column, the documents reveal an effort to entrap Flynn, including the use of a blatantly unconstitutional statute to achieve that goal. However, there appears far more
that has not been released,
according to various sources. Go ahead.
The release of the Flynn documents highlight what Attorney General William Barr said on the Ingram angle on April 10th. Y'all remember when we showed that? And that was pretty intense. I love that guy. And stated that far more troubling material will be released as a result of the investigation of U.S. Attorney John Durham. I believe it is a mistake for Barr to give such foreshadowing interviews before the release of the Durham report. While I agree with Barr ordering these reviews and his view of the evidence so far, these interviews only undermine the credibility and that of the eventual report. For full disclosure, I testified in favor of Barr's confirmation before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Putting that aside, the evidence strongly supports Barr's efforts to force the disclosure of material that has been buried despite the claims of full investigations by Congress and the Inspector General. Bizarrely, the media and many liberal commentators are struggling to ignore these troubling disclosures and the obvious abuses that they reflect within the Justice Department, meaning they don't want to cover it. Barr stated that my own view is that the evidence shows that we're not dealing with just mistakes or sloppiness. He added, there was something far more troubling here. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and if people broke the law and we can establish that with the evidence, they will be prosecuted. Referring to the Russian investigation, as one of the greatest travesties in American history without any basis. He stated that the evidence shows a whole pattern of events while he was president to sabotage the presidency, or at least have the effect of sabotaging the presidency. Once again, I agree with Barr on the damning character of this evidence and what is emerging as the likely political purpose or bias behind decisions at the Justice Department at the start of the Trump administration. Despite the rationalizations of the media experts, this is one of the most thuggish records I have seen as a criminal defense attorney. This was not an effort to investigate a crime. It was an effort to create a crime. Flynn had not committed any crime in meeting with the Russian, and the Logan Act is universally denounced as unenforceable and unconstitutional. So, these top justice officials were planning to create a crime for which Flynn might be prosecuted solely out of the desire to prosecute him or force him out of office. The remarks do indicate that the Durham investigation is at an advanced stage. Many of us have heard that Durham was not satisfied with the Inspector General's report and has found potentially criminal conduct. As I stated today in the column, the Flynn material discloses additional evidence of a hostile intent to target key Trump aides, including the use of a law that is notoriously and presumptively unconstitutional. The material reflects a wild search for any ground upon which Flynn could be entrapped.
Okay. Yay!
God bless America.
All right, guys. So that's the end of the show for today. I believe that this totally exonerates General Flynn.
It's awesome.
And the dominoes will continue to keep falling.
The dominoes are coming down.
In 2020, God kind of spoke to us and said this would be the best year ever. I believe that this is a sign of that. And I want you to be part of the team saying peace be still to all of the forces out there that have been raging. If you are raging at the swamp, well, tell them as a storm to peace be still. If you're in the boat and there's a storm happening, you can yell and scream all you want. Do you want the storm to stop, or you just want to be angry at the storm and be all like...
What did Jesus do to the storm?
Peace be still.
He said, peace be still.
And if I have instilled anything in you, I would hope that it would be the ability to produce change through prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about this with a neighbor friend of ours. We were talking about why the models for the United States have been so widely off of the death tolls with the COVID-19. Could it be prayer has kept our country from
the
succumbing
idea
to such horrible death tolls?
Yes. Yes.
Is it just the numbers were off? Or is God protecting us? We prayed here on the show. I have friends who fasted and prayed. And how come you're so upset about the lockdowns because they don't seem to justify something, but they would have if 1.2 million people died, right?
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if God kept those people from dying? What if the blood of Jesus, as we talked about over Easter, and you and many others put the blood of Jesus? And what if the models couldn't put the blood of Jesus and the healing power and the protection power of Jesus into the model, which China didn't have? And unfortunately, Italy didn't have the chance to do ahead of time because they didn't know what was hitting them. What if we had the benefit of seeing what was happening in Italy and France and Spain, and we're able to get on our knees and say, God, please don't let that come here. And we should be giving glory to God.
It washes white as snow.
All right, we have a P.O. box. If you guys want to send us anything, letters, we will leave them on air.
We're not begging for money because we're poor and destitute.
P.O. Box 107, Milford, Ohio 45150.
If you send us your letters, we will read them on air unless otherwise noted. We do like to connect with you guys.
We will be back here hopefully at 6 o'clock. If it's a little bit late, it's because we're going to our
Grant's Farm
greenhouse, open house greenhouse. So it might be 7-ish, but we'll try to be here at 6.
We are going to try. And then we'll be back here on Sunday.
At 1 o'clock for our UK and Euro news.
That's right.
We have a lot of good news coming out of Europe.
Yes. All right. So... thank you guys for being here. Thank you to all of our moderators. You all are absolutely fantastic. Donna Terry says people lie to get into office and then they change. That's absolutely very true.
The original Wi-Fi.
God is good. Amen. All right, so we're going to sign off. Be blessed. Go with God. And we'll see you back tomorrow night at 6-ish. Bye, guys.
Let's go.